Let's be clear about what's happening across Europe right now. What we're seeing in late 2025 isn't just another swing of the political pendulum. It's something much deeper, a fundamental reshaping of the entire continent's power structure.
You know, the old rulebook for European politics, it's basically been tossed out the window. That once clear line between what was considered mainstream and what was on the fringe, well, it's pretty much gone.
So, if the old system is breaking down, what's actually replacing it? That's the big question we're tackling today. We're going to break down 3 very distinct futures that are starting to take shape, each with huge implications for the continent.
So what's feeding all this? Well, it's this perfect storm of anxieties. You've got inflation that just won't go away, economies that feel like they're stuck in mud, and a security situation that feels, frankly, chaotic. People are just fed up. All right, let's dive into our first model, which we're calling normalization. This is the path where a right-wing party doesn't just win an election, it basically becomes the new establishment. And you really can't talk about this without talking about Italy's Giorgia Meloni. She is the absolute poster child for this model. She has masterfully taken her party from the fringes and turned it into a powerful, stable governing force.
And look, the numbers don't lie. She is just dominating. Her party is polling around 31%, which is miles ahead of anyone else. She's managed to lock down power in a way that's incredibly rare in modern European politics.
So, how does she pull it off? What's the secret sauce? Well, it's this really clever balancing act. On one hand, she keeps international markets and allies calm with pretty standard economic policies and a strong pro-NATO foreign policy. On the other hand, she delivers on the cultural issues that fired up her base in the first place.
But, and this is a big but, there's a serious challenge brewing. Her staunchly pro-NATO, pro-Ukraine stance is starting to clash with how people feel at home. With almost 40% of Italians now wanting to stop sending military aid, she's walking a very fine line between her global allies and her own voters.
Okay, so on the complete flip side of Meloni's success, we have our second model, the siege. This is the scenario where the right is wildly popular, maybe more popular than ever, but they are completely locked out of actual power.
Over in France, the name you need to know is Jordan Bardella. He's only 30, but with Marine Le Pen sidelined by legal issues, he has become the new superstar of the nationalist right, and his support has just exploded.
I mean, just look at these numbers for the 2027 election. He's pulling in as much as 37.5% in the first round. Even more incredible, he's projected to win every single runoff scenario against any opponent. He is the clear president in waiting.
And what's fueling this massive surge? Look no further than the economy. A paltry 0.7% growth is all that's expected for 2025. The political center just feels broken to a lot of voters, and they're looking for something radically different. And you see almost the exact same dynamic playing out in Austria with Herbert Kickl. His far-right Freedom Party actually won the 2024 election, but he's not the chancellor.
Now, you'd think being shut out of government would weaken him, right? Nope. The exact opposite happened. His party's support has shot up to an incredible 38%. The move to block him has actually made him stronger.
And this is a really clever part of his strategy. He calls himself the Volkskanzler, the People's Chancellor. He's basically telling everyone, I'm the guy you actually voted for, and the elites are trying to stop me. And that message is really, really working.
So you see the dynamic here? This siege model is basically a political pressure cooker. You have these hugely popular parties that are being held back by these political firewalls, and all that populist anger just keeps building and building.
All right, on to our third and final model, which we're calling fragmentation. And this one is all about paralysis. This is what happens when the traditional center-right manages to hang on to power, but only by forming these weak, fragile coalitions that lead to total gridlock. The perfect case study here is Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz. I mean, he finally got the top job, his lifelong dream, but the victory felt empty. It shoved him into this deeply unpopular grand coalition that has left him completely stuck.
And the election results from February 2025 really tell you everything you need to know. Merz party won, sure, but the big story was the far-right AfD surging into second place with over 20% of the vote, making them the main opposition party.
This put Merz in a total bind because of something called the Brandmauer, the firewall. It's this agreement among all the mainstream parties that they will never form a government with the AfD. So his only option was to team up with his biggest rivals.
And the political cost of all this gridlock?
it's been absolutely brutal for Merz. His approval ratings have crashed to just 32%. And of course, all this weakness and paralysis only makes the AfD look like a more appealing alternative to frustrated voters.
But if you want a real cautionary tale within this fragmentation model, just look at the Netherlands. Remember Geert Wilder's shocking victory in 2023? Well, his government didn't last long. He took a huge risk collapsing his own government to force a new election on migration, thinking he'd come back even stronger.
And boy, did that gamble backfire. Voters, it turns out, were completely fed up with the chaos. They swung hard back to the center. Wilder's party actually lost 11 seats, while the centrist D66 party gained 17. It's a powerful reminder that while voters might like populist ideas, they hate instability.
Okay, so let's pull this all together. We've got three very different paths emerging. First, normalization, the Italian model, where the right successfully becomes the new mainstream. Second, the siege, the French and Austrian model, where being excluded from power just makes the right stronger. And third, fragmentation, the German and Dutch model, where weak centrist governments create a vacuum that populists are happy to fill.
So the big question for Europe as we head into 2026 isn't if things are changing, but how. Which of these models is going to win out? Will we see more pragmatic, establishment figures like Meloni, more besieged outsiders like Bardella, or more paralyzed governments like Merz? The answer is going to define the continent for a long, long time.